diplomat, heads the United Nations mission in Haiti.
What has been the psychological effect of the kidnappings in Port-au-Prince?
It is clear that the whole of society has felt panic in front of the increase in kidnappings. I was desperate when I saw in the months of June or May hundreds of people flying to Miami and trying to leave the country. All children being taken out of schools, trying to leave the country.
Some 23 months after Aristide's violent overthrow, Haiti remains a country without democracy, where national elections have been repeatedly postponed. But the latest suffering, the uprooting of Haiti's nascent democracy, might have been avoided if only Aristide and his political opponents, led by business leaders and disaffected supporters, had managed to settle their differences peacefully before the armed rebellion. Much of the responsibility of trying to make that happen rested on the shoulders of this man, Brian Dean Curran, then U.S. Ambassador to Haiti.
Clearly, the promotion of democracy was at the very heart of what I was doing in Haiti.
Ambassador Curran ultimately failed as a peacemaker, but tonight he says publicly for the first time that his efforts were undermined by an unlikely source, elements of his own government.
The official policy was to accept that Aristide was the president of Haiti and to work with him to find political solutions to the political impasse. That was the officially stated policy. Those were my instructions. That was not always, however, the message that came from Washington.
Curran said that while he was telling Aristide's political opponents that they too must compromise, the opponents were getting a very different message through back channels from Washington.
Hang tough. Don't compromise. In the long run, we'll get rid of Aristide.
Directly contradicting.
Directly contradicting. And this was the kind of mixed message that I felt had a very nefarious effect on my ability to carry out my official instructions and U.S. official policy.
But it was who delivered this second message that most surprised and angered Curran.
There was another message that was coming from organizations that were funded by the United States government to work on the Haitian situation.
What groups are we talking about here?
The International Republican Institute in particular.
Based in Washington, D.C., the International Republican Institute is a nonprofit group that received $36 million in federal money in 2004. The IRI is one of several U.S.-funded groups whose mission is to promote democracy by building political parties and monitoring elections in more than 50 countries, including Venezuela, Iraq, and Afghanistan. George Foriel is IRI's senior vice president. When IRI receives federal money to do its job overseas, does IRI see itself as a representative of the United States government?
In many ways it does, absolutely. I mean, these institutions were created to project, if you will, to represent the practice, the ideals of the American democratic system.
Fact that there was this once noble democracy, experiment in democracy that was tried, and for various reasons has failed, has been uprooted, and we wanted to look at why that happened. Nourishing democracy around the globe is a buzzword for the Bush administration. I thought it was important to go down there and look at how is this policy in practice? How is the United States carrying out this goal of nourishing democracy, of promoting democracy in Haiti? And the answer is it hasn't done a whole lot. One wonders if it can ever be saved. I mean, this was a country that was, of course, the first, black republic, first slave revolt in the world. Historic place in terms of shaping how America developed. And I thought this was a story that was worthy of being told.
New York Times reporting, exclusive access beyond the front page, only on the Discovery Times channel.
From the day he was voted into office in 1990, Aristide aroused fear among the powerful in Port-au-Prince and in Washington. The priest who had preached liberation theology had for the first time given the poor of Haiti a voice in national affairs.
Notre richesse a été et est et sera volée par les États-Unis. C'est clair, Dieu ne nous a pas abandonnés.
But in Aristide's speeches, the military and their wealthy backers heard only provocation.
In fact, if you remember, the major speech of Aristide was September 27, 1991, after he came back from the United Nations. And that's the speech that triggered the coup d'etat against him, where he said, whenever you feel the heat under your feet, turn your eyes to the mountains where the wealthy are. They're responsible for you. Go give them what they deserve. And that's the speech that brought about the coup d'etat.
7 months after Aristide took office, Haitian military commanders deposed him in September 1991. The administration of the first President Bush did not intervene. Senator Christopher Dodd, a Democrat, closely monitors Haitian affairs. He says that Aristide angered powerful Republicans in Washington.
Aristide was a new phenomenon in Haiti. This was a very popularly elected person who comes out of these poverty-stricken areas of Port-au-Prince. And he wasn't going to be beholden to the United States. And so he was going to be trouble. And we had interests and ties with some of the very strong financial interests in the country. And Aristide was threatening them and threatening a lot of things they did for years down there. So they built up this opposition to him in the United States.
That opposition was driven by anti-Castro stalwarts like Senator Jesse Helms.
Aristide, they talk about restoring him to office, and I certainly don't want to lose an American life to put that fellow back in. He is mentally unstable.
Helms based that statement in part on a CIA report that was later discredited. Helms and others who opposed restoring Aristide to power feared his economic populism might spread to other Latin American countries, places like oil-producing Venezuela with far more wealth than Haiti. Then, in September 1994, President Bill Clinton, under pressure from the Congressional Black Caucus, sent troops in to restore Aristide to power.
We welcome friends from America, from Africa, from Europe, from Latin America.
And I think it infuriated the extreme right in this country.
But upon his return, Haiti's fragile democracy needed an experienced leader. Aristide was anything but.
He'd not trained to be a politician, he trained to be a priest. So that when he got involved heavily in politics, he didn't know very much about the games politicians play and about how societies can be run.
Frustrated with Aristide's shortcomings, the international community denied his government financial aid, driving Aristide deeper into the arms of his most fervent supporters in the slums. When those supporters engaged in criminal acts, including killings and drug trafficking, Aristide was either unable or unwilling to stop it.
I worked very closely with Aristide on a number of issues. I saw him frequently.
Curran, appointed U.S. ambassador by President Clinton, became disillusioned with Aristide.
And I had many conversations with him about the police, about human rights abuses. And in the end, he disappointed me.
Still, Aristide's party, La Valace, remained popular. In May 2000, it won a landslide victory in local and parliamentary elections. But in that election, a controversy arose that would ultimately doom the Aristide presidency. The international community disputed how some Senate races were decided, prompting Aristide's opponents to boycott the upcoming presidential race.
The legislative elections had been seriously flawed, and Aristide had not listened to the concerted and unanimous advice of the international community that something needed to be done about that before proceeding to a presidential election.
Aristide ended up winning the presidency with 91.5% of the vote.
The United States, as a matter of policy, accepted it.
But the opposition held fast. and the crisis deepened. What began as a dispute over a handful of Senate seats eventually became a battle over the very legitimacy of Aristide's presidency. Andy Aped, one of Aristide's fiercest critics, owns one of the largest textile factories in Haiti, where 5,000 workers churn out T-shirts for international customers.
I was told by several senior diplomats that in the end, President Aristide was willing to give up a good bit of his power, but that his opponents did not want to compromise.
I had 8 meetings with him, and in those meetings we kept nailing and pressing that a reasonable compromise be done. During that whole period of time, he was inching towards the compromise, always late, always late.
As the impasse grew increasingly hostile, some Aristide supporters in the slums turned violent. Ambassador Curran's job as a peacemaker had just become more difficult. More than ever, he needed the full support of his own government. But as he would later recount, it was not to be.
Our task was made immeasurably more difficult, and I felt that my efforts were being undermined.
This is not supporting democracy. When you accede to powerful forces in a country that want to push a president out because they don't like him.
Robert McGuire directs the International Affairs program at Trinity University and has studied Haitian affairs for decades.
Whether we like it or not, he was elected to office. He was a recognized international leader.
Security and peace.
Chaired by Senator John McCain, the Institute is backed by millions in federal funds and donations from, among others, the oil and national defense industries, including Halliburton.
The IRI will continue its mission of hope for decades to come.
It has its links to the Republican Party, and it undertakes democracy-building programs abroad. And that's what IRI was supposed to be doing in Haiti.
In Haiti, IRI had received a federal grant to build political parties through effective campaigning and organizing, hallmarks of a healthy democracy.
It's the practice of democracy, open, transparent political process, rule of law, development of institutions that relate to that process, and ability to express one's views openly and freely. So create the space, if you will, for that kind of system to prosper.
But the choice of this man, Stanley Lucas, to head IRI's operation in Haiti caused many, especially the poor, to view the IRI with deep suspicion.
Mr. Lucas comes from a family in the northern part of Haiti, which was a big landowning family with a lot of allegations that it accumulated land through exploiting peasants. And to select someone like this to be your point person sends a very provocative message, I think, particularly to those supporting Aristide.
I have a problem with Stanley in the sense that he makes a lot of things personal.
Marc Bazin is a former World Bank official who ran against Aristide for president in 1990.
He was prepared to act aggressively to get Aristide out of power. I have no problem with someone who considered Aristide to be bad and that Aristide should be improved or even removed, but make it for the good of the country, not as for revenge or anything personal. I think that's a disservice to the country.
And a disservice to the United States as well, according to Ambassador Curran, who accused Lucas of deliberately trying to undermine U.S. policy.
That someone who is in the employ of an organization under contract to the United States government to promote democracy in Haiti should suggest that the U.S. ambassador doesn't represent U.S. policy is really egregious behavior. And then there are the specifics of urging members of the opposition not to negotiate in good faith, not to compromise, while he's on the payroll of the United States government in effect as a contractor. when U.S. policy was directly the contrary is also egregious in my view. And that is why I cannot understand that he was kept on, despite my complaints.
What was the result of that behavior?
My view is that this seriously complicated the efforts to bring about a political solution.
Another diplomat who had problems with Stanley Lucas was Luigi Einaudi, the representative from the Organization of American States. Like Curran, he too was trying to bridge the divide between Aristide and his opponents.
Stanley Lucas is a very bright man, very able man. I thought it was a mistake the way Dean Curran did. I think that he should become the person in charge of the IRI's policies and activities. After all, the International Republican Institute is meant to be a representative of the United States. They took positions that were extremely opposed to any kind of modus vivendi with President Aristide. And they supported people who refused to accept his legitimacy.
You know, I'm not going to question, again, Ambassador Curran, and I certainly do not question Ambassador Einaudi. But the problem we're having here is that we're talking about facts coming from serious people, but they obviously are hearing this from others. And this is the difficulty we have. This is an environment of rumors and whispers and innuendos and political interests.
Was one of IRI's goals to get rid of Aristide?
No. IRI's role was to broaden, if you will, the ability of various actors to participate in the political process.
Well, was IRI sending out a message to political parties in Haiti, activists in Haiti, that they truly represented American foreign policy and that you didn't?
Absolutely.
How did you feel about that?
I complained about it.
What was the response?
I did not get a satisfactory response.
Who'd you complain to?
My hierarchical superiors, if you will.
Why do you suppose you didn't get a satisfactory
Well, I don't know the answer to that question. And this has troubled me for a long time.
Is that because IRI had political clout that you didn't have?
I'll leave that to your judgment.
Internal government emails show that Ambassador Curran complained repeatedly about Stanley Lucas without success. I continue to have grave misgivings about Lucas, Curran wrote to top State Department officials. Curran also complained that Congress had pressured officials to fund IRI in Haiti without more government oversight. With Stanley Lucas in charge, this grant, he wrote, risked us being accused of attempting to destabilize the government.
And that's what Mr. Lucas was doing. I think he was doing it, getting a wink and a nod from the White House and others who had a different agenda than what the stated policy was of the State Department.
Senator Christopher Dodd, a Democrat, is a frequent critic of the Bush administration's foreign policy.
You get the feeling you get very close to this thing, and then you'd watch the rug get pulled out from beneath you because the opposition groups could turn around, talk to the administration or people close enough to it, and would tell them, don't make any deals, don't worry, just let's buy more time. The more time we get, the continued deterioration things here, we'll be able to get rid of this guy. And I think Mr. Lucas was down there to guarantee that the opposition groups would have that kind of a contact to discourage them from reaching any kind of agreement.
I think some people probably don't really know Stanley terribly well, Stanley Lucas terribly well. There's something of a cottage industry that's sort of built around what he has or hasn't done, perceptions, rumors, whisperings.
Why wouldn't IRI allow us to interview Mr. Lucas?
Well, there's actually a fairly simple reason. There are only 2 or 3 sort of layers of the IRI universe that get to talk to good folks like you. I'm one of them.
Mr. Lucas later responded to written questions, denying that he acted contrary to American policy. I never told the opposition not to negotiate, he said. If tensions were rising in Haiti, it was just a hint of what was to happen
across the border in the Dominican Republic. There have been so many disappointments in Haitian history that one more somehow will not defeat that country. As easy it is to just throw up your hands and say, you know, there's just no way we will ever see a better day. Somehow that doesn't happen. Somehow there will come a day like occurred in 1990 that nobody thought would happen, when Aristide became the first democratically elected president. And people turned out by the thousands and voted, and did so in a safe way. And democracy began to sink its roots in that rocky mountainside of Haiti. So there is hope. There is always hope when people go vote. And there is that hope that somehow this upcoming election will be a step in the right direction.
New York Times reporting, exclusive access beyond the front page, only on the Discovery Times channel.
Affluent neighbor, where Haitian criminals and those seeking to overthrow the Haitian government have found shelter, including rebel leader Guy Philippe. Philippe was accused of a 2001 coup attempt against Aristide that left 9 dead. But he escaped back to the Dominican Republic.
Now we will continue to yes.
Well, Guy Philippe, he had to flee shortly before I arrived because he was involved in a coup plot against Aristide, which was unmasked. And then he obviously came back in the tumultuous events of last year.
Alberto Despradel was the Dominican ambassador to Haiti until late 2004. Did the United States close its eyes to what Mr. Philippe was doing in the Dominican Republic?
Not the United States as a country, but given the intelligence services the United States has in place throughout the Caribbean and their advanced technology that lets them hear a mosquito in outer space, I think Guy Philippe is bigger than that.
So they knew what Guy Philippe was doing.
If I, the ambassador of a poor country, knew what was going on,
so the United States certainly knew.
We didn't know about training of the rebels. We knew that some opponents of Aristide, ex-military opponents of Aristide, had found refuge or were in the Dominican Republic.
James Foley succeeded Brian Dean Curran as U.S. ambassador to Haiti in September 2003. It didn't come across your desk that these people were training in a military sort of way for some impending action?
To be honest, we didn't really take them very seriously. Our sense was that they were not a large force, not a well-trained force, and not in any way a threat to stability in Haiti. Now that proved to be otherwise.
While Guy Philippe was plotting his coup, IRI and Stanley Lucas were also in the Dominican Republic, hosting meetings with hundreds of Aristide's political opponents. They met in this luxury hotel to learn how to run better political campaigns. Aristide's Lavalas party, the country's largest, was not invited, in part because IRI said its workers had been threatened by Aristide's supporters. Marc Bazin said he sent representatives to the IRI meetings.
The report I got from my people was that there were 2 meetings, open meetings where democracy would be discussed, and closed meetings where other things would be discussed, and we are not invited to the other meetings.
What do you suppose went on in the other meetings?
In my view, it was removal of Aristide by all means.
This was a training program. Period.
Were there 2 kinds of meetings?
No, there were not 2 kinds of meetings.
IRI decided that it would not work with the largest political party in Haiti, Lavalas. Why not?
Very easy decision. Lavalas was, to some degree, remains the most significant political party in the country. It's a judgment call. Our interest was to, in fact, not so much simply work with a relatively successful political institution, political operation, but to try to have some competition.
And I think that we have to be, again, very careful that we are not perceived to be an advocate for a particular party or for a particular candidate, but for democratic principles.
William Delahunt, a Massachusetts congressman who has traveled frequently to Haiti, said he was troubled by IRI's decision to work only with Aristide's opposition.
I think that is very dangerous in terms of the perception of the United States, not just in Latin America, but elsewhere.
In Haiti, Ambassador Curran's days were drawing to a close. Otto Reich, who was a special U.S. envoy for Western Hemisphere affairs, told the Times Curran had failed to understand that America's policy had changed, moving gradually away from supporting Aristide. If so, Secretary of State Colin Powell also missed the change. He said in an interview with the Times that the U.S. had one and only one policy, to support Aristide's right to serve out his term. As you left Haiti for the last time, as your plane took off, what were your thoughts?
They were of deep concern that the country was heading towards a cataclysm, a conviction that Aristide would not last his term, and disappointment that I had not been able to do more.
He made a remarkable speech before leaving regarding the interference between the politicians in Washington regarding Haiti. He said, I'm the ambassador and I'm the one responsible for defining and applying U.S. policy in this country. You guys, some of you, listen to other people. And I suspect that it was referring to Stanley Lucas. Actually, he even said something.
Chimere of Washington, he said.
That's right, the Chimere of Washington. That's correct. It was clear, the allusion was clear. It cannot be any clearer.
We've been talking about Mr. Lucas quite a bit already, and that's what I meant.
Chimere, for our viewers.
Well, chimere, because, well, you know the term chimere in Haiti. It refers to the people who emerge from the night, armed and hooded sometimes, commit outrageous acts, and nobody ever knows who they are. And so the Haitians, in their marvelous language, which is so full of allusions and metaphor, have created this term for these people, the chimere, the ghosts, because they're there and they do things and they terrify you and then they fade away. So people in Washington can also come down and terrify and then fade away and are not held accountable.
What won't you see in the documentary about Haiti? The smell. People say that sometimes the sharpest memory one has, or of your senses that bring back memories, is the smell. And every time I come back and I smell what one encounters in some of the poorer neighborhoods, it will never leave you. And there's no way you can communicate that in a documentary.
New York Times reporting, exclusive access beyond the front page, only on the Discovery Times channel.
July 4th Independence Day celebration in 1999, attended by the nation's elite, including the IRI's Stanley Lucas. And it was here, in the U.S. Ambassador's residence, where diplomats tried to arrange a last-chance meeting to save Aristide's presidency, according to Ambassador Luigi Einaudi, who represented the Organization of American States in Haiti. For the first time, he speaks publicly about what happened.
I was trying to barter, broker, negotiate between the government of Haiti and its opposition so they could reach some understandings that would limit the violence, which at times has taken on a rather exaggerated and senseless form in Haiti.
In the fall of 2003, the prospects for peace looked bleak.
Basically, the situation in Haiti had continued to deteriorate, and there were signs that we were heading toward genuine violence, and even the kinds of things that one might call civil war.
Then, Ambassador Einaudi said, he came up with a last chance plan, one final effort to bring the two sides together.
We agreed to set up a meeting in the residence of the American ambassador. And it was clear that this was one way of getting this done, that is to say, forcing people to come together and to meet. And I think Aristide was prepared to make some quite significant concessions, and a number of Haitians in the opposition were still ready to perhaps play.
It was shortly after Ambassador James Foley first arrived in Haiti.
I'd had a good first meeting with President Aristide on my arrival, so Einaudi wanted to build on that and to hold a meeting here at my residence between President Aristide and a cross-section of opposition and maybe civil society leaders to try to reach that compromise. And so he pitched that idea to me.
Everyone knows that ambassadors are under instructions. They don't have pre-announced meetings unless they have the support of their government.
Once again, there was hope. Representatives of both sides had agreed to come, and President Aristide was willing to give up most of his power, diplomats said. But then, a surprise.
And the bottom line is that it was canceled by Ambassador Foley without consulting me.
Pulled the rug out from under you.
Pulling the rug out, absolutely, from this effort.
I initially responded with some positive indications, but I said I wanted to come back and check and consult when I got here. You have to understand, I just arrived. I think he'd been down over 20 or 30 times and had held many such meetings. And I was very concerned that shortly after my arrival, when I felt I had a little momentum and a lot of authority, that we not hold a meeting that would not succeed.
Terrence Todman, a retired U.S. diplomat, had worked on behalf of the OAS in Haiti. Todman confirmed Einaudi's account, telling the Times, quote, "That was the end of any effort to get them together. That blew it, the final attempt."
I disagree extremely strongly that that was the last chance. That was a potential pitfall that we avoided. I think the die was cast on other occasions.
Well, this is the first time I've heard that. I find it very disturbing. If there was a last opportunity and it wasn't acted upon and we did not pursue it, that would be a stain on the United States.
Several months later, Guy Philippe and the rebels were closing in, and the United States whisked Aristide off to exile.
Did the U.S. push President Aristide out of power?
President Aristide made a decision for the good of Haiti, and I think he spoke eloquently about his reasons in his letter of resignation.
Congress demanded to know how a democratically elected government so close to home could be overthrown.
It doesn't add up. For the greatest country in the world to be fearful of 200 thugs, my goodness. And to tell someone, you can stay, but unfortunately, there's a group of murderers, drug dealers, and thugs that are armed to the teeth who are going to get you, or you can go. That's not a choice. That is not a choice.
Roger Noriega, President Bush's choice to oversee Latin American affairs at the State Department, denied any link between Stanley Lucas, IRI, and the armed ouster of Aristide by rebel leader Guy Philippe.
Can you assure this committee that Mr. Lucas, the IRI staff, and participants in the training programs have had absolutely no involvement or contact with Guy Philippe or other members of the Haitian Armed Forces or PrAP?
I have never heard that, and to my knowledge, it wouldn't be the case. It certainly wouldn't be acceptable.
No, but do you know whether or not that's the case?
We know who this... pardon me, sir?
Do you know whether or not that's the case?
I have never heard that assertion, and if it were the case, we would certainly stop it. We knew who Guy Philippe was, and that he had a criminal background. He would have no role in whatsoever.
I'd like you to inquire, if you would. I want you to make a...
Please do. I will certainly do that.
Noriega, who has since left the government, declined to be interviewed on camera. And a year and a half later,
The Bush administration has reported no such connections between Philippe and Lucas. Did you ever ask Stanley Lucas if he knew Guy Philippe or had discussions with Guy Philippe?
I've gone around many times with him as to who he knows, who he doesn't know, who he's met with, and so forth. And this is an issue we, at the end of the day, come empty-handed.
But Guy Philippe tells a different story. He said he's known Stanley Lucas most of his life.
I knew Stanley Lucas when I was a boy. I grew up in Canapé, and Stanley was there. He used to be my teacher in ping pong. I played ping pong, table tennis, so he used to be my coach.
Philippe said he also saw Lucas in Ecuador and in the Dominican Republic at the time of the IRI meetings.
I met him in Ecuador. I told you I talked to him in Ecuador, but a friendly talk. But politics, I never...
Did you ever see him in the Dominican Republic?
I've seen him in a Hotel Santo Domingo, with his guys, but I was not invited in the debate, but I was living in the hotel, sleeping in the hotel, so I've seen him and his friends and those guys from the opposition, but we didn't talk about politics.
In his written response, Lucas said he never met Philippe in Ecuador or in the Dominican Republic. To be clear, I do not know Guy Philippe, he wrote. Another rebel leader, Paul Arcelin, told us that he met Stanley Lucas at the Hotel Santo Domingo, but did not discuss Aristide's overthrow. We discussed the future of Haiti, he said. Lucas disputes that account.
I think the more accurate description of what happened there is that he was told to get lost when he showed up in one of our programs in the Dominican Republic.
By early January 2006, Haiti still has no elected government. Its criminal justice system is either weak or corrupt.
As a former prosecutor, what has the interim government done to support the rule of law in Haiti?
Well, they've done nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Meanwhile, Haiti's new police chief recently made a stunning admission. 25% of his officers are either corrupt, drug dealing, or tied to kidnappers.
Unfortunately, we have reports of executions that are supposedly performed by the Haitian police.
In late August 2005, at this soccer match, Haitian police in uniform swept through the crowd, where investigators say they targeted people for summary execution outside the gates. Off camera, shots are heard. At least 10 people were killed. This video was obtained by the New York Times from someone in hiding. Ironically, the soccer match had been financed in part by the United States to bring peace to this Port-au-Prince neighborhood of Martissant. At least 16 police officers now face possible charges relating to the killings. Senator Dodd said the Bush administration bears some of the blame for Haiti's sorry plight.
So they were so preoccupied with their determination to get rid of Aristide and to avoid any compromise between the opposition groups and Aristide that they never spent 5 minutes worth of time figuring out what happens after Aristide goes.
Nobody seriously can believe that the problem of development in Haiti can be solved with the presence of some soldiers for 1 year or 1 year and a half. This would not be a commitment, this would be simply a gesture. Haiti has no need for gestures. What they need is a permanent commitment from the financial community, from the United States, which is a central actor and has to have a role of leadership in this situation.
Meanwhile, Guy Philippe is among more than 30 people campaigning for president. And Stanley Lucas continues to work for IRI, now in Afghanistan, a country of vital importance to the U.S.
We don't have any questions about the quality of his work. He's one of our best political party trainers.
Should someone like Mr. Lucas continue to work in USAID programs around the world?
Absolutely not.
You know he's still active?
No.
Around the world?
No, I didn't realize that.
I don't see that the U.S. is exporting democracy. I don't see it's exporting a way of building the terrain to get democracy more enrooted in countries. I think it's more exporting kind of fear that if we don't do the things the way the U.S. and the powerful interests in our country want us to do them, then perhaps we'll be as expendable as Mr. Aristide was.
Okay, sorry about that one.